When I started in health and safety, one of the biggest problems was actually understanding what people were talking about. All the jargon we have in health and safety is just like... So in this episode, we're gonna try and bust, not all the jargon, because there's just way too much of it, but some of it. Let's go.
The problem in safety isn't deviation, it's complexity.
Health and safety has gone mad.
Health and safety is trying to unpick having gone mad in the past.
There's no one solution and one problem. The problem is that we are looking for one solution.
Does the structure of the team allow them to flourish?
Feel safe enough to be uncomfortable.
The environment defines our behaviours.
People aren't the problem, they're the solution.
Rebranding safety, crushing the stereotype. Brought to you by Riskfluent. What's up guys, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is exactly what it says on the tin. We're here to rebrand health and safety, to stop it going mad, to challenge the perception of health and safety. We do that on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the like, and all that malarkey. So, all the bell as well, so you never miss another episode. And if you haven't checked out the podcast, go and check it out. Just type in Rebranding Safety on any of your podcast platforms. Yes, platforms. Let's get into today's video then. We are talking about jargon, health and safety jargon. I remember when I was, new as a fresh health and safety professional, the amount of jargon there is like half the battle to actually understand what's going on and what people are talking about. So we're going to go through some, not all, because there's so much of it in this video. First, we're going to go through some of the basics. Now, I apologise if this is a bit suck eggs. I've got a funny feeling we might have to do about 5 million of these jargon buster videos to actually get to the end of all of them. So we're going to start off with the basic. Health and safety. Health, inside. Safety, outside. That's the best way I've always thought of it. Health is something on the inside, your brain, your lungs, your kidneys, all that stuff, your health, your mental health and your physical health and all that, right? Safety is the outside, cuts, bruises, bones, broken, all that stuff. Health and safety. Risk and hazard. Risk and hazard. Hazard, something with the potential to cause harm. Easy. Something that's going to hit me, something that's going to trip me over. Risk, the likelihood of that hazard actually causing harm. Severity, severity. That feels wrong, severity. How bad something's gonna hurt. First aid injury, fatality. Cuts and bruise, broken arm. Likelihood, the likelihood of something happening. Risk assessment, something we're legally required to do, and it basically identifies the hazards, works out the likelihood versus the severity of that hazard causing harm, hence the risk. An assessment of the risk. Easy peasy. We've done about 3 videos on risk assessments, so go check them out on our YouTube channel. The next 3, incident, accident and near miss, are kind of broken down in very, well, just in loads of different ways, depending on where you work. We all like to change them around, but this is just how I interpret them, okay? An incident, I kind of use it as kind of like a collective noun to describe an accident and a near miss. It's an unplanned event. An accident would be an unplanned event that causes damage, loss or injury. A near miss would be something that nearly caused damage, loss or injury. Okay, let's go into some of the legal stuff that can get a bit confusing. The responsible person. This is mostly referred to in fire, but also referred to in kind of generalist safety as well. But the responsible person is essentially the person who's in control of something. Now, again, this varies on how we want to look at it, because the next one, the duty holder, is how I would see it, the ultimate responsible person. The responsible person is kind of the same as the duty holder. To be honest, they're both really the same. It's the person at the top of the chain, ultimately in control of everything in the business, that is ultimately responsible for everything in the business. Therefore, the responsible person for a business or an undertaking, which basically is the business, is the CEO, the managing director, etc. Now, businesses can kind of delegate that responsibility down the line and say, you are the responsible person for this operation. And that's kind of like an internal agreement, but from a legal point of view, the responsible person is always the top of the chain. Now, that does not mean you are not responsible. Well, you might be irresponsible, but that's just on your personality. But the key thing here is that we need to understand that everybody is responsible for what they do or don't do. So under the Health and Safety at Work Act, you might call that by your own acts, what you did do, or omissions, what you didn't do. So you're responsible for those. So you've got the responsible person, basically the top dog, who's the duty holder, the person that holds the duty of the Health and Safety at Work Act and has to make sure that that is implemented within the business. They're at the top. Then below that, you might have delegated responsibilities under a business, but ultimately, top dog, responsible person, duty holder, same thing. Appointed person. Normally in first aid, this basically is a person that takes control in an emergency event. So you might have an appointed person for first aid. You might have an appointed person for first aid and fire and emergency drills, things like that, right? Appointed person is a way of saying you're taking control in an emergency situation. Competent person. Now, under the Health and Safety at Work Act or Management of Health and Safety at Work regs. So in the legislation, we say that we have to appoint a competent person to help us carry out the duties of the legislation, such as you must do everything within reasonable, practical, blah, blah, blah. That competent person could be anybody, and we've done a whole video on this, so go and check that out. But essentially, competence or a competent person is somebody that's carrying out the task of delivering the duties within the Health and Safety at Work Act and other regulations, right? But competence, as in a broader kind of approach, is looking at someone's experience, their knowledge, their skills, their attitudes, their training, all of that stuff rolled up into one creates competence. We have done a video on competence, feel free to go check it out. Now, seeing as I've just mentioned it, reasonably practicable. As far as I'm concerned, this is the most beautiful phrase ever written in legislation, but essentially what this means is it comes under as far as reasonable practicable. So it means that you must do something to reduce the risk of such and such as far as reasonably and practicable. As far as reasonable practicable. As far as reasonable, for fuck's sake. You must do something to control the risk as far as reasonably practicable. There we go. As far as reasonably practicable. Basically, do what's reasonable and practical in proportion to your business and the risk. So this is essentially your risk assessment. So you'll do your risk assessment, you'll work out, based on the risk, what's reasonable and practicable for us to implement to reduce the risk. Duty of care. Your duty of care mostly comes from civil law, and we've done a video on criminal law versus civil law. You can go check that out. I know you're thinking, God, they've done a video on everything. No, apparently there's so much more. But that's right. The duty of care is essentially the duty from the civil law, which basically is created around precedent. So you have a duty to your neighbours. So your neighbours is essentially anybody that is impacted by your undertaking, by your actions, emissions and all that stuff, right? So your duty of care is that you have a duty to do what's reasonable to anybody that's impacted by whatever you do. So you basically just have to keep everyone in mind. You have a duty to think about as much as you can, you know, what's foreseeable. But go check out the civil law, criminal law, where we explain all of this stuff a hell of a lot better. But your duty of care is essentially something that you are required to do under civil law. You could probably say the same thing for the Health and Safety at Work Act. It's a duty, yeah, but it's written down in Health and Safety at Work Act, but it's not written down in civil law. So you have a duty of care set from precedent. Just to let you know, a precedent is basically what the case before and case before and case before did and said or decided. That sets a precedent. So for example, if I had pizza for dinner tonight, that sets a precedent that every, what day is it today? Thursday, we will have a pizza for dinner. Yeah, precedent. If only that was the case, I would love pizza every Thursday. Beyond reasonable doubt, and on the balance of probabilities. These essentially are burdens of proof, and they come from criminal and civil law. Like I said a minute ago, go check out our civil law versus criminal law video where we explain this in depth. But a balance of probabilities is the easiest way to describe this. Is kind of like 49 and 51. 61. So the balance of probabilities, essentially, the easiest way I look at it is 49 and 51%. So where's the decision lie? Is it 51% that the company should have done something, or 51% that the person is making this case up and they lose the case? So it's like, instead of like 99.9% sure, which is the next one, beyond reasonable doubt, so that's like, we got to be pretty sure, yeah? The balance of probabilities is, yeah, it's more this one than it is that one. Okay? Oakley dokley, that was it, as quick as I could do it and as simple as I could do it. Some of the basic jargon that I really struggled with in the beginning of my career, and I've got a funny feeling we're going to be doing Jargon Buster 0.0, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, because there's just so much jargon in our industry. So hopefully you found this interesting, hopefully you found this helpful. If you can, think of one person that would find it interesting or find it helpful and share it with them. That would be grand. Drop me a comment below on the kind of main piece of jargon that really threw you for a while, or you maybe still can't get your head around, and we'll have a chat about that in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Safe.